I'm not really sure what I can say about The Last of Us that hasn't really already been said over the course of the last year. And with the amount of hype this game has gotten, I kind of feel like I'm just preaching to the choir by even doing a review, but I missed out on the opportunity to touch on this game back when it was first released, so here's the remastered version and what I think of it. So I guess I'll start off by talking about what everyone knows The Last of Us for, and that's its story. And I mean, what can I say at this point? I mean, it's a masterpiece. It's one of the best stories told of the last console generation in a single game. Like, I would put it up there with BioShock and Red Dead Redemption if it doesn't exceed them. The developer Naughty Dog previously did Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 on the PlayStation 3, which were smash hit successes, and they finished off with The Last of Us, and if you've played Uncharted, you would know that they're more of like a lighthearted modern Indiana Jones. The Last of Us is a total departure from that. It is brutal, gritty, and an absolutely adult story. Now, I'm going to have to keep the details on this story to an absolute minimum, just to avoid spoilers, but basically the story is about a man named Joel who you play as, and he is tasked with taking a 14-year-old girl named Ellie, and he has to take her across post-apocalyptic America in this destroyed, zombie-infested world. Now, I know when I describe the story like that, it might sound a little cliche or unoriginal, but just trust me when I say that this story is not like that. It's not predictable, it's very engaging throughout the entire length of it, and it's very well written. Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson play the roles of Joel and Ellie, and they just do a absolutely phenomenal job, just star-making performances from these guys. And in fact, pretty much everyone in the supporting cast in this game is fantastic. Like, they all just get an A+ from me. I think the two most notable roles are probably Jeffrey Pierce, who plays Tommy, Joel's brother, and Nolan North, the star of the Uncharted franchise, actually makes an appearance in this game as a supporting character, a very creepy one. But I'll let people figure that one out for themselves, because that was probably one of the most memorable parts in the entire game for me. Now, the gameplay. The gameplay of The Last of Us is a perfect blend of shooting, brawling, stealth, and exploration. Throughout the game, you'll get a wide variety of weapons such as revolver, shotgun, bow and arrow, and even a flamethrower. But the thing is, supplies for these weapons is very limited. You need to do a lot of scavenging, and when combat shows up, you need to be very careful with your movements and make sure every shot counts. Now, on top of conventional weapons, you can also craft items using materials you find around the world. You learn how to craft more items as the game goes on, but you can make things such as medkits, pipe bombs, smoke bombs, Molotov cocktails, and various other things you can use to get the jump on your enemies. And sometimes when shit hits the fan and you're just pinned down with no ammo and nothing to use, that's when you pull out some stealth and you can sneak kill enemies, you can use lead pipes with scissors in them, you can use baseball bats to bash enemies' teeth in, and just sometimes use your own fists. And then, whenever you're done fighting the living, you can go fight the, I guess, semi-dead. The game isn't really clear on the infected in this game, but basically infected people, they pose a different kind of threat than the living. With infected, there are three types in the game that you need to worry about. There's the early stage infected guys called runners, who are pretty easy to kill, but they see you the easiest. Medium stage clickers, who are harder to kill, but they see like bats, so as long as you keep your noise to a minimum, you can sneak past them. And then the very late stage guys called bloaters, who are the hardest enemies in the game to kill, and if you have to fight one, then you better have a lot of ammo to work with. Basically what I'm getting at with all this is that The Last of Us has tons of variety in the gameplay that you'll be doing, and you'll never get bored of just doing the same thing over and over again. The Last of Us also has a difficulty mode that is perfect for anyone of any skill level. In the remastered version, there are 5 difficulty levels: easy, normal, hard, survivor, and the DLC bonus super hard mode called grounded. While upping and lowering the difficulty is obviously going to change how difficult the enemies are to kill, it also more dramatically affects the amount of supplies that you find while you're playing. For example, playing on a higher difficulty mode will make it very difficult to find surplus ammo, as well as finding parts which you can use to upgrade your weapons at workbenches, and supplements which you use to upgrade your personal abilities, such as your crafting speed and weapon sway. And on the opposite end, if you play on easy and normal, it's pretty easy to just shoot your way through the entire game if you just don't want to bother with stealth. Overall, the story of The Last of Us is just unforgettable. I mean, I've done about 5 or 6 playthroughs now, and I'm gonna do another one, probably more, and every time I play it, I always just find new things that I never discovered before. It's usually not anything major. I mean, it's usually just a little weapons cache or a note with some character's backstory that I never read before. But it succeeds with flying colors at making you feel that you're in a totally believable and realistic world. Oh, and there's one other thing I gotta touch on in the single player: the soundtrack. Oh my god, the soundtrack in this game is so good. It has this really primal and minimalistic feel to it, but is also incredibly beautiful in these moments of isolation. Like, just listen to this.
Hey, look at that. Yep, what'd I tell you, huh?
Now, when you're done with the main story for The Last of Us, there's a side story called Left Behind that's a single-player DLC that comes included with the remastered. And I can't show any gameplay of it because I really don't know how I can describe it without spoiling it, at least on some level. So all I'm going to say is that it involves Ellie's backstory, and it's a fantastic ride that you absolutely should play after you finish the main story. Now, just the single player of this game alone is worth a full price purchase, but when you're done with that, you have to go check out this game's kick-ass multiplayer. I can guarantee that you've never played something quite like this, at least not in a AAA game. It bears all the similarities of a regular deathmatch style multiplayer, but all of the survival elements from the single player are brought in. You can still do all things like crafting, modding, upgrading, and there's still limited ammo that you have to work with. Now, this is going to be kind of complicated for me to explain, but just bear with me. I'm going to try and break this down to as simple of a process as I can. When you first start playing the multiplayer of The Last of Us, you're basically creating a clan in the world. You can choose between being a hunter or a firefly clan. Your goal is basically to get your clan to survive to 12 weeks, and each game you play of multiplayer counts as one day. You want to do good in matches because doing well means you get more supplies. A surplus of supplies causes your clan size to grow, whereas not getting enough supplies to meet your clan's needs causes people to get hungry, sick, and die. And then along the way, you've got tons of variables here. Like, you've got various roadblocks where, like, opposing clans might try to attack yours, malaria outbreaks, hostage situations, and you have to deal with these by taking on challenges, such as basically making a bet that you're going to get, say, 6 downs with revolver in the next 3 matches, or 2 kills with a Molotov. It's complicated to explain, but believe me, once you play it, you'll catch on pretty quick. And that's what I mean when I say you've probably never played something like this before. This is an incredibly deep and detailed multiplayer system that is sadly probably going to get a little overlooked because of how good this single player is. My one complaint I have with multiplayer though is that there's not really a whole lot of variety to it. It's a really fun game to play, but your game types pretty much consist of Supply Raid, which is Team Deathmatch, Survivors, which is round-based Team Deathmatch, best of 7, and then the DLC mode which comes with Remastered called Interrogation. But all of these game types pretty much consist of spawn, kill the enemy, do it over again until the game's over. In this kind of world, it seems like it'd be perfect for there to be some kind of steal the enemy's supplies, like a variation of capture the flag, or destroy the enemy's base, like search and destroy. But I've already put about 8 hours into the multiplayer, and I have no signs of slowing down, so it's definitely worth it regardless. It's just a shame that we couldn't get a little more variation. You've also got a fair amount of customization you can do with the multiplayer, both cosmetic and what you bring into the battle. There's a bunch of different hats and headgear that you can wear, and you can also design your own emblem, and there's a few different gestures that you can use, like sort of like taunts that you can use in battle. You can also customize your own weapons loadout with things like pistols, rifles, perks, and a few purchasable multiplayer weapons that you actually can't get in single player. Something else in multiplayer I want to touch on are the maps. They are fantastic, all of them, and in the remastered version, you're going to be getting a bunch to work with. Some of these maps even have dynamic elements such as snowstorms and fog. And all of the multiplayer maps are designed with teamwork in mind. If you go running off on your own trying to be Rambo, you're gonna die. Even if you have armor, 2-on-1 is a no contest. And I think that's what really got me with this multiplayer, is that it's so balanced. You wouldn't think that something with different mods and things that you can buy and crafting and things like that would really be all that balanced, but Naughty Dog has done a fantastic job at just making sure like you always feel like you have a chance. This is the kind of multiplayer where if you like to play with your buddies and communicate in a chat party and move with like pairs and like get really tactical about it, you've got to play The Last of Us multiplayer. It's an absolute must. Okay, I want to try and keep this under 10 minutes, so I'm going to try and wrap it all up here and give my final score. Okay, so to wrap it up, we've basically got one of the best single-player experiences you're probably ever going to play, a really good DLC single-player experience to go with it, a kick-ass multiplayer mode that you will be able to sink a lot of time into, and it's all for $55. It's got to be a 10 out of 10. There's really no other way I can put it. If I was reviewing this back in 2013 at the original, I still would give it a 10 out of 10. Some people want to say that The Last of Us is the game of a generation. I think that's totally subjective, but there's no doubt that this is going to leave a profound impression on you even way after you turn off the console. If you've never played The Last of Us before and you don't own a PlayStation 4, this is actually a system seller. This is a game that you should buy a PS4 to play. There are moments in this game where you'll have a tear in your eye, there'll be moments where you're laughing out loud, and there will be times when you're just terrified. And while I'm sure there are plenty of people who would disagree with me, I would say The Last of Us is Sony's new Citizen Kane. Alright, that's it. That's my review of The Last of Us, and you're late, but we got around to it eventually. If you like the video, then, hit like, and if you have an opinion on The Last of Us that differs from mine, or if you just agree with me, comment it down below and I'll take a look. Okay, thanks for watching the video, guys, and I'll see you around.